Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday, and welcome to the show where we take you inside D2 football along with Matt Witwicky, Chris Ferguson, and Tony Nicolette. I am Chuck Bittner. Coach Poe may join a little bit later on. He actually has some responsibilities running a basketball tournament, even though it's still football season, as we just gave him grief for privately. But Poe may be along a little bit later to help us with the picks, and if not, we've got plenty of expertise here to talk you through round one of the 2025 Division II football playoffs. It certainly was an interesting day. We had some surprising results. We had some very unexpected results, I would say, and we had no shortage of drama. So we will unpack all of it for you. Talk through all 16 games to various degrees. We'll unpack some of them a little bit more than others, but we'll get you up to speed on everything that happened yesterday, and then we'll make our picks for all 8 games coming up in round number 2 this coming Saturday. So, Whit, let's get right to it. If you want to bring up the updates on the brackets, we'll kind of just talk through the results here, kind of give you the picture of where we stand with each bracket. And guys, if there's anything you want to jump in with here, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll get to the featured games here in just a few minutes. The Super Region 1 bracket had probably the most upsets because we had 3 unseeded teams upending seeded teams. You can see the shame all over Ferg's face there. And we'll get to the games, but what started with so much promise and optimism there for the CIAA, unfortunately ended not so well. But we had both those teams hosting, falling to unseeded teams at home. And then we also had IUP losing at home to Assumption. And all of those were pretty close games for most of the way. And of course, Kutztown took care of their business and blew out Bentley. No problem there at all in that one. So let's go to Region 2, Whit. A little bit more predictable here. We had West Florida pretty much taking care of business with North Greenville. Kentucky State got off the deck there a little bit in the second half and made a game up. And then Newberry pulled away in the fourth quarter. So both of those teams get their victories. Albany State and Valdosta were locked in a tight battle for most of the day. Really exciting football game in that one. And then if you haven't seen the end of Benedict's win at Wingate, oh boy. One of the most dramatic finishes I think we've ever seen in the playoff tournament in Division II. So we'll take a peek at that and talk through that game as well. And as you can see, that win set up round 3 for Albany State and Benedict. So we'll pick that game for the 3rd time this season. No idea how that will go, but I think we did have that in the picks the other 2 times they played. Didn't we have that in the picks both times? Yeah. So yes. We'll see. Well, that's going to be its own Super 7 pick segment here pretty soon. It's just all Albany State and Benedict. So let's go to Super Region 3, Whit, and take a look at this one. So we had 3 of the seeded teams win. We had 1 unseeded. And this was actually probably the most boring bracket of the day because most of these were fairly lopsided victories. Not to say we didn't have some. Yeah, none of them were really close. Not to say that some of them were not interesting. We're going to talk about Ashland and their big day. And, of course, UND taking care of Truman in pretty short order in that one. But no real drama there in the Region 3 bracket. And then in Super Region 4, we once again have another unseeded matchup with UTPB taking care of Pueblo on the road and Western Colorado getting a big win up there at Central Washington. So the breaking news that came out maybe about an hour ago is that game will be at Western Colorado. And on the other side of the bracket, we'll have Pitt State and Harding, a rematch from a playoff game a year ago. Harding taking care of Northwest Missouri State in the first round, and a really close game, competitive all the way with Chadron and Pitt State, setting up the round 2 matchup there. So that is the quick update on the bracket. Before we move on from that, guys, anything else you wanted to talk to the bracket, or you want to jump into our premier games?
You know, Chuck, when I take a look originally at Super Region 1, and I'm going to pop over there for a moment, only one of the seeded teams ends up advancing here. And I know I'm not rubbing it in, but something that just kind of caught my eye. And then as we go ahead and we move forward, I don't think anybody in SR3 had. I mean, we thought Ferris was a good chance of being a one-sided contest. I think we all kind of figured that Truman playing in a team for a second time and the other 2 matchups with the GMAC and the Northern Sun, that we were going to have some really tight games. So the fact that none of these games were even close, by the second half, I thought that was a little bit surprising. How about you guys?
Yeah, what I want to try and say about the two GMAC games is they were actually relatively tight in the first half. And then it was in the second half that you saw somebody pull away.
Right.
Ferris was pretty much what we would have expected. I was very surprised to see not that UND won or not that they won big, but for them to be up 30-0 at the break, that I didn't see coming. And I agree with your assessment that I would have thought that with a second time having another shot at Indy, that Truman would have been up to it a little bit more than that, but they weren't. And that, I have to admit, that was a little bit surprising. And I told you last week, I knew picking against Ashland was going to cost me. And I was not surprised that Ashland won. I was surprised that game got as lopsided as it did.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll deep dive that one in just a few minutes. So. All right. Well, where do you want to start in the top game reviews?
This one makes sense to me, Chuck. The one that we probably, I would say, Chuck, in talking about it last week, this was probably the most interesting or appealing game coming on in, because it was one of those, with the history between these programs and what they've met 4 times in the past, and Northwest, for the most part, in fairly one-sided fashion, and was been able to shut down the run game of Harding. And by the time the ball got snapped, pretty much all that thought went by the wayside. First play of the game, Braden Jay goes for 11 yards. And I immediately thought to myself, okay, they just kind of showed right off the bat that we're going to be marching on you today, or this isn't going to be what you think it is. And that's kind of how it felt to me, guys. Harding goes and marches right down the field, and they did a nice job of kind of salt and pepper and, Andrew Miller between the tackles, Braden Jay around the outside, Cole Keelan every once in a while. And, Cole Keelan had dinged up his shoulder in the third quarter last week, and for all intents and purposes did not come back in the game, and had a real bad right shoulder. Now he throws with his left shoulder or his left arm, and you could tell he had a pretty good sized brace on that arm, and I'm sure that Northwest could see that from the film the previous week. And one of the first few plays of the game, Chuck, he kept, and kind of way I think went in the B gap on the right side, and he had a pretty good collision, and he got up and was just fine. And when I saw that, I thought, I bet the rest of his team just said, we're going to be all right today. And because he does such a great job playing point guard with that offense, Chuck. And they got themselves, up 24-10 come halftime. And, they scored right after half, which I felt was kind of the end game at that point. Northwest drew within 14, but really wasn't able to establish enough offensively. Zechariah Owens was pretty much a non-factor. And I think that for me, in watching what they've been doing this year, Northwest, Owens has been kind of their home run hitter, and a guy that really makes a big difference, giving their offense a boost when he can get his legs going. And he hasn't been able to get them going the last few weeks, and he was dinged up for a bit. And I just feel like this Northwest offense isn't quite the same when he's not doing that. And, on the other side, you go ahead and Harding converts 10 out of 13 on third down, has the ball 43 minutes in this contest. And, you see Shane Fredrickson with a heck of a ball game, 31 tackles against an option team, because of the fact that they were trying, they're trying to funnel things to certain players when the way they do this with the option. But that also means that he's making too many plays downfield, and which is not a good sign at that point. But Shane Fredrickson's a heck of a ball player and somebody we've talked about before. But Chuck, this Harding was steadfast in their effort all the way through, and I didn't think that they showed much in the sign of weakness or give at all in this contest. And I just didn't think that Northwest, the offense was polished enough. And I didn't think that they had what they needed defensively to slow down Northwest.
And we've kind of talked about it before, and guys, Harding is just such a team to fall behind against.
Mm-hmm.
If you fall behind a couple scores, it's just so hard to overcome that. And when I think the first time you and I talked, it was still early in the game. I believe they were already up a couple of scores at that point, and we already kind of thought this is such an uphill battle now for Northwest because to try to close the gap, make up those scores and overtake them, it's just such a hard thing to do against them.
Well, you're going to get your limited possessions, 1. 2, if you're behind, you kind of tend to want to score quick. And 3, that ends up putting your defense back out on the field, who's already been dealing with probably long, time-consuming drives, so they're already gassed. And now they're trying to stop them when they're not at full go. It's a bad recipe. That is not there are very few dichotomies greater than Harding or somebody like that, right? Where if you get them down by 2 scores, then it's a little bit of a problem for them. But the minute they get you down 2 scores, that's it. I mean, it's almost impossible to be able to overcome something like that.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so Harding gets a big win, and of course they will have to go right back at it against the best in the MIAA once again with Pitt State next week, and we'll preview that game in the back half of the show. So let's get to our next one, and we'll go to Super Region 2. Whit, why don't you tell the audience what the score was around the end of the third quarter before we got to this final outcome?
Yeah, this was an interesting one. So I kind of tuned in late on this. And Xavier Pugh, running back from Wingate, who's a 1,000-yard ball carrier for them, 20 scores. He did not play in this contest. But Wingate was out and running up 24-0, Chuck. I kind of figured this is one of those games I really don't need to put a lot of eyes on, if I'm going to be honest. And, then all of a sudden, they start having a few things happen. And Benedict starts kind of climbing back on in. I mean, there was a blocked field goal that went 95 yards for a score for Benedict. And, just kind of some things where they were creeping back into the game a little bit, Chuck. And then they get to the point where they've got 4th down, deep in their own end, inside what are they at, right around the 15. And they're on their last gasp. I mean, there was seconds left on the clock. And they went ahead, Chuck, and pulled off maybe the most wild play that I've seen at the end of a D2 playoff game, because nothing else comes to mind, to be perfectly honest.
It was quite extraordinary. And I think, we've kind of said before, we have to be really careful about getting video for these games because ESPN owns the IP for the broadcasts on these. We have to be really careful about sharing video. But this was just too darn good for us to not show. So we're going to queue up the tape and show you what this play was like, because you just have to see it.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead, Chuck, and show the regular game feed. And then there was also an additional sideline video to just kind of go ahead and show perspective, because, well, the original video, unfortunately in D2, sometimes we miss the shot a little bit as it moved down the field. There was something very D2 about that. But anyway, so let's go ahead. I'm going to let the original play first with audio and everything. You may need to turn up your sound a little bit because the audio on the original broadcast was quite low. But here we go, and we'll talk about it in just a moment. If you have not seen it, check this out.
And they shut down the final play. Jensen, is going to have to get it off and then complete the pass. They've been a little wild here in the last couple of plays. He'll just dump it down to Simmons. Simmons pump fakes. Now he'll throw it all the way to the other side of the field. There's room down the sideline. Boss chasing him down. Brandon Perry trying to get to it. Oh my goodness. Benedict has scored. Benedict has scored. Holy cow.
I can't get a little tickle every time I watch that. And at the same time, guys, I feel horrible for Wingate to get walked off in that manner. I mean, can you imagine being a fan and it's 24-0, and all of a sudden the last play of the game, and you see the ball. By the way, the wideout who caught it was an old quarterback of theirs, and throws a dart. 40. It might have been his best pass as a collegian. And
they've clearly practiced that.
That was a lateral. It was a lateral, not a pass. It was a lateral.
Right.
It was. But there's no doubt they have practiced that.
But that was dark, yes.
The fact that they caught that in, the way they did, and I can't blame.
The only way it would work.
Yeah, I can't blame Wingate for how they defended that. They were sitting back saying, "Okay, we'll give you that short one." I mean, who throws the ball all the way across the field like that? Well, not everyone's going to be doing that, but let's go ahead and see the other angle that we have. And that one does not have audio, guys. And HBCU Game Day had this one on their socials. You get a chance to see this from the opposite angle. I mean, they probably, in hindsight, should have gone after him a little bit more aggressively there and not let him get the throw off. And then we're just turning on the burners here. Last moment, the play gets contested, and they still end up making it to the pay window. That's
that's the thing, Whit, is that even as remarkable as that play was, if he gets tackled at the 1 yard line, Wingate still wins a football game. And they had a shot at it, and unfortunately just didn't make the play for them. But man, K-Ferg for Benedict, and K-Ferg may have some technology there, but for Benedict, what a moment for them. No matter how they get this win, what a moment for them. I think back to those really good teams they had that won back-to-back league championships when Chennis Berry was there, 2 straight undefeated seasons, but did not win a playoff game. So this was really something that really needed to happen for them at some point. So what a great moment for them.
Well, it's their first ever playoff win. I mean, that's how monumental this was in general. And we keep talking about, people are kind of afraid to pick Benedict, but they found a way to win by any means possible. I mean, just how resourceful and creative they have gotten to get to the win column. And I mean, it's just huge. I mean, for Wingate to go out, in the first round, 2 straight seasons like that, like at the very end of games, I mean, that's a bit demoralizing too. Especially in this one, but for Benedict and what they were able to do, I mean, just incredible.
They will remember that and talk about it in Columbia for decades to come. It truly was remarkable. One of, I think, 3 programs that got their first ever D2 playoff win yesterday. So huge congrats to the Tigers, and they will play on. So Whit, let's go to our next game. So to Super Region 3, Ashland and Minnesota Duluth. Now, guys, I don't know that we all picked Duluth. We'll see that. We'll have to live that down when we get to the picks, but we all picked Duluth to win this game. But honestly, I think we all kind of had the same read on it, which is that we certainly wouldn't be shocked if Ashland wins. But I was at this game yesterday, had a wonderful time, met a lot of great people, had a chance to talk to a lot of very passionate D2 football fans and a lot of folks who recognized me and talked about the fact that they watched the show. So that's always a kick when we get to do those, and got to do a fun halftime bit on the radio with the Ashland radio crew, Dave Wilson and the gang there. Really enjoyed doing that. I had a wonderful experience there and perfect weather. As far as the game, one of the things I was talking about with people beforehand was I don't really know what to expect here just because we don't see a lot of GMAC versus Northern Sun. And I kind of felt like the best team out of the Northern Sun is probably going to be just a little bit more physical and probably a little bit deeper in the roster. And that may have been true in Findlay, but it certainly was not true in Ashland yesterday. So, I mean, guys, Ashland did a lot of things well, but it really just boiled down to them being better at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. Defensively, they really committed to containing Kyle Waljasper running the football and covering the tight end, Luke Denicky. And they were successful at that all day long. And the Bulldogs just didn't really seem to have anything else that they could pivot to. Ashland's pass rush was so consistent and so intense that, Duluth just wasn't really finding opportunities to get into any kind of a rhythm with the passing game. By the time we got into late stages and Duluth had to try to push the ball down the field, it just wasn't working. And then Ashland ends up coming up with 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions. and that's against one of the premier quarterbacks in all of Division II. So I really just got to give massive kudos to that Ashland defense. But I also have to say, as impressive as they were, what I really did not expect was how well Ashland's offense moved the ball, especially running the football. They did a phenomenal job yesterday. 245 rushing yards. The freshman phenom, Chris Maloney, really kind of carried the load. He had 155, but the spot they picked for the quarterback run with Cam Blair, 79 yards on 10 carries, and it seemed like more than that because every time he ran the ball, it produced a really big impact play. And he wasn't sacked all day either. So all in all, just a great performance for them. And then, of course, anytime you can get into a playoff game and win the turnover battle 4-0, you have a really good chance to win the football game. So
Right.
I really did not expect this type of outcome or this type of a point disparity. I mean, honestly, guys, if Duluth hadn't returned the opening kickoff down inside the red zone, it'd have been a shutout. So really just a fantastic performance all around for Ashland.
Yeah, Chuck, I thought that, Duluth, every time Duluth would look like they were getting something started, they'd get sacked, or they would have a negative play, or they would get a turnover, or the block kick.
Yep.
And they had how many negative plays did they have in that ball game compared to the negative plays Ashland did, which I don't know if there was almost any. Ashland, they were either not getting a conversion or they were just moving forward. And I thought the efficiency that they played with, and at the same time the ability to disrupt Duluth and make it so that Wall Jasper wasn't able to get ahead of steam and attack the guys at the second level in the run game. The front line and that front was able to go ahead and do a good enough job where there was very few times where he got loose. And in the pass game, he just didn't have that much time to throw. And, Ashland leads the country in Division II in sacks.
Yeah.
And they really showed some of that, I felt. Tony, did you get a chance to catch any of the action?
Yeah, I did. And I was surprised at, especially after how well Duluth has moved the ball, just kind of pretty much through, not only throughout the year, but throughout Wall Jasper's career.
Right.
For them to show up and basically not be able to move the ball or to constantly shoot themselves in the foot the way that they did, I was very surprised by. And again, that makes it sound like I'm not giving Ashland credit because you have to. Again, if you lead the country in sacks, I don't care who you're playing. But I think what got exposed in this game was, Duluth was, I think, maybe just a little more reliant on Kyle Walljasper to have a good game than maybe we really predicted. And you and I talked about this on the region show, that we really felt like Walljasper gave Duluth the advantage at quarterback. And, obviously in this game, that didn't pan out that way, in part because Ashland's defense was so well prepared and they did such a good job of neutralizing everything that Walljasper likes to do, that once you took him out of the game and had to put them into basically catch-up mode, it was over. So, I mean, even though it was 17-7 at the break, that lead felt bigger. It didn't.
I agree.
It didn't really feel like Duluth was really going to be able to, overcome that.
Agreed. I think to some extent they probably got accustomed to an over-reliance on him in the bigger games.
Yeah.
And in a contest like this where Ashland had an answer for him, the plan B did not pan out. And they still ended up going to him quite a bit. I mean, and kudos to Ashland on the defensive side, how well they played, and the fact that they didn't hurt themselves offensively and cashed in at times when they really had good opportunities.
Yeah, because they ran the ball beautifully, and I think that's sorry, Chuck, didn't mean to catch over you, but I think what you notice is their ability to control the front was big on offense. Because when your quarterback goes 9-22. Obviously, your passing game wasn't really doing a whole lot. But in this game, they didn't need it, right?
Right.
Now, is that going to win a lot of playoff games throwing the ball like that? Probably not. But, boy, it sure did yesterday.
Yep, no doubt. Minimizing mistakes was a huge part of their effort. They did not make many mistakes at all. So awesome game, awesome performance. I had a wonderful day. Thank you to everyone at Ashland who said hello and took good care of me. I had a wonderful experience there. All right, on to the next one. K-Ferg, you were on site for this one in Charlotte. Looked like nice weather there as well. Frostburg State, one of the other teams that gets their first ever playoff win. Unfortunately for you, it comes at the expense of the CIAA champs. But give us some of your thoughts on how this one played out. And I know it was actually a very close game most of the way.
Yeah. When you look at this game, the teams traded interceptions early. But the difference being that Frostburg started to find some consistency in the run game pretty early, and when you look at when they got to halftime, it being 14-0, a lot of that was just they were content to kind of stick to the game plan, run until they can kind of sense an opening, and then they would take a shot down the field with Jordan Brooks, the quarterback, and connect, and really some of that was runs after the catch too, that they were able to connect to keep drives going. And also early in the game, I mean, Johnson C. Smith penalties. I thought penalties might have been a bigger impact on Frostburg, kind of just based on their body of work for the year. But it was actually the Golden Bulls who had some uncharacteristic penalties that extended drives and gave Frostburg the opportunity to get to the end zone. You kind of see there, KJ Smothers is responsible for all three of the touchdowns that Frostburg had. Johnson C. Smith had their chances. They came about in the third quarter, and they got the ball down the field with DeAndre Proctor as the wide receiver. You see, he had 14 of the 18 passes that Kelvin Durham had. And so, one of the scores was on fourth down, fourth and short, if goal to go, he was able to get in. The second one, though, they had an opportunity to at least tie the game, and Durham got the ball down the field, and then they were trying to do what felt like a hurry up offense, and then Durham fumbled the ball away, and they were right on the door of the red zone. So, Frostburg, for their credit, they really attacked the JCSU's offensive line, because Durham was under duress like the entire game, and so they just couldn't get a consistent rush. Bobby Smith, I think, felt like he was maybe limping a little bit, had struggled. They went to another like a four-string running back at that point because the other two were out. And they tried, and they had some success, especially in the third quarter. But it's 14-0. It just felt like that 14-0, kind of like the other games, was just like, man, it was just felt like such a big hole for JCSU to climb out of, especially with how well Frostburg's defense was playing. And I do want to at least shout out the Frostburg offensive line. Had a lovely chat with them after the game, and had a little bit of interaction at the very end of the game, and definitely appreciate that. It shows that they're watching.
Chris, I was going to say, you, Kerry, and myself, we all picked Johnson C. Smith to win this game in the Super Region 1 pod, so we all got that wrong. But I would have thought, with it being a home game for them, their stadium and all that, I thought you would have been fairly safe from ridicule for the picks, and that was not the case towards the end of that game. So go check out Chris's socials if you want to see the somewhat humorous video that he got of that.
I have a question for Ferg real quick about this game. This is not us taking anything away from some of the victors this week, but we have alluded to in the recent past that, some of the teams had really, really big games heading into the playoffs. And you had Virginia Union playing Johnson C. Smith a week ago in a game that was like a big celebration type game. And you had, Northwest and Pitt both doing that same kind of thing in a different manner out in Kansas City. And we had some really big contests like that. And then some teams where they come and they play a home game against a team that they don't know at all. Ferg, I felt like this is one of those moments where Johnson C. Smith comes on into a game and it just doesn't have the same. It's hard to have your guys have the same juice coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would say a couple of things there. Coach Flowers and the the post game presser, just mentioned that he didn't feel like it was any of that. Really, JCSU, I just felt like they just ran out of depth, and they are having to start some guys, especially on the offensive line, that were like redshirt freshmen. They're having to do their first career start in a big game like this, and it takes them a while to get settled. And Frostburg's a very, very good defensive front. So I think that's part of it, because I think you saw the response in the third quarter. I mean, they were moving with a lot more urgency in the third quarter in particular. But it was just one of those games that, it's almost like they sort of ran out of gas in a way. And I think it was less about the CIAA championship and just more about, in the end, they're just beat up in quite a bit of ways. They're beat up at running back. They're beat up in on the offensive line, and it just caught up to them. So yeah, and the other thing I'll just mention, and I thought maybe this would be a little bit less of a factor for them, but the CIAA in general is it takes them like 2 to 3 years for a school to go consecutively to like win a playoff game, because it's their first ever time in the playoffs. I felt like maybe this may have been an exception because they've had some big games this year. They played Valdosta when Valdosta was ranked, and they played that at home, and they hung in there, and they executed the game plan. They got revenge on VUU later in the season, and
right.
I just thought that maybe this might be the exception, but that clearly that hypothesis has not been disproven at this point. So it was a great season for JCSU, a very memorable one, but I think it's a loss that they're definitely going to be building on going into next year.
Well, luckily we didn't have that in the pick'em. So
no, we'll have to live that down in the regional pod, but but
Right.
a really good win there for Frostburg State, and their first playoff win as a Division II member. So congrats to the Bobcats. And I don't know if it's been confirmed yet. We are still waiting to see where they will be playing next week. So let's go to our next game. We'll go back to back out to the Rocky Mountain States. So we had CSU Pueblo hosting UTPB. Whit, I was trying to keep track of just like the quarterly score updates, and every time one of those came out, UTPB was just up by multiple scores the whole way. They got up on them early. It was at 17-0 at the end of the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about how this got to that point so quickly, where Pueblo was just playing catch up the whole day.
Yeah, I mean, Pueblo's offense sputtered at the beginning of the game, and they have not been getting out of the gate quickly in some of these big contests. I mean, we saw it when they were down against Western Colorado. But, Cannon Gibson is probably one of the best quarterbacks that's in the dance here. And, he ends up throwing for 343. And I want to say, Chuck, that he had 250 at the break.
Yep.
I mean, they were gunning, and that was, I thought the big difference was that they were able to go ahead and be electric in the pass game and immediately put Pueblo on their heels. And, Reggie Ratzlaff had a pretty pedestrian ball game, 4 games for 4 grabs, 71 yards. The rushing game was really not there for Pueblo. And, you see Roman Fuller under 50% passing. Those things don't add up to a recipe for a success at all. And, at the same time, Cannon Gibson is not going to be the type who's going to run for a ton of yards on you, but he is able to move the chains and be effective enough. And when they need for someone to score close to the goal, he can do that too. And, I thought it was just a very, very impressive win by UTPB going in there the way they did, and frankly blowing out Pueblo. I mean, this game was never close. Yeah. And we've kind of talked about this. I think the Pueblo defense is kind of the underrated factor with them. And in this game they clearly UTPB got Pueblo off their mark offensively, and big kudos to the Falcons.
Yeah, and you talked about this in the last game with And we talked about it a little week on last week's show when we were getting into the picks for this, was Pueblo going to have any juice? And that was one of the things that their broadcast crew talked about as you're getting into the third quarter, and this game's still at 30. I think was it 27-3 or 30-3 at one point.
Right.
And even after they scored to make it, I think 30-10.
Right.
They just kept talking about how we just don't have any juice. You could just sense it. And so it was one of those things where I think you nailed it. Pueblo sensed it, threw the ball effectively. I mean, I think Gibson at one point in the third quarter still only had like maybe 3 incompletions or something insane like that. I mean, he was deadly accurate all day.
Right.
And they just jumped on him, and they couldn't get back. So, I mean, I think you're dead on. That happens with some of these big games that they have at the end of the year and having to win overtime, 2, 3, or twice in 3 weeks or whatever it was coming down the stretch. Getting there seemed to take it all out of the Thunderwolves.
Well, and remember, guys, a year ago, UTPB went to Pueblo in game 2 of the season, something like that, and Pueblo kind of took it to them.
Yeah.
So UTPB kind of had a little bit of a get back game, and ball clubs don't forget that. And so you come into this, they had not played a real big game. Pueblo had, or UTPB in a few weeks.
Right.
They had a chance to get healthy. So for them, all of a sudden, this was like the next big game. And I thought they really showed that.
Yep, I agree. Really impressive win, and I agree with some of your comments there, Tony. I think eventually that sort of catches up with you, all those overtime games, and just not having the juice there. So First playoff victory for UTPB. They've done a lot in their short time as a D2 football member in the last couple of years, but this was their first playoff win, so congrats to them. All right, let's go back. Unfortunately, we have to make Kayford relive a little bit more pain here before we can move on. And I think this one did not shock me. I even said on the SR1 show, I thought if there's a bracket buster somewhere in this group, it might just be Cal, simply because we thought they do have a pretty high ceiling. But, Chris, I know one of the things that you said when we broke this game down was I just don't really know who Cal is. We didn't really have a good read on what their identity was. They'd been through some injury problems, different things with quarterbacks, but, and their numbers yesterday weren't fantastic, but they were able to do enough. And I guess really it's probably more about the defense for Cal having a really good day, a couple of turnovers that they were able to force, and a little bit of a rough day for RJ Rosales.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand that he got knocked out of the game.
He did.
And so, then you bring in Miles Derricott, who, really hadn't played except in garbage time in games. And they still managed to, keep it relatively close. I mean, VU had 4 turnovers in this game. And so the margin of victory was less than that. And so they had their chances. And, fortunately, field goal. They missed a field goal right at the end of the game to at least tie to go to overtime. But they tried to persevere as best they could. I think, definitely a lot of credit to Cal's defense. The offense, if there's one thing to know about the offense for Cal is that they just played keep away for extended periods of time. The VU's defense was defending for an additional 30 more plays than what VU's offense got. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot to take on. And so to still have lose by 3 is quite tremendous. I kind of saw, how, Cal made light of keeping Curtis Allen, much lower than his average in yards, was still 128 yards of offense and a touchdown. I mean, that's kind of what happens in some of these games where, they're trying to balance things out a little bit more. 18 passing attempts for VUU, but, it's definitely credit, to what they were able to do. Cal's able to do to escape with a win.
Well, and with all the stuff I had going on yesterday, this was one of the close games. So this is one I happened to pay a decent amount of attention to. And Cal really actually had the better of it in most of this game. So I'll echo what you were saying, Ferg, in that VUU really seemed to out-effort Cal in this game because Cal had 3 trips inside of the VUU 10-yard line and got 6 points out of that.
Mhm.
And they got a touchdown to make it a 2-score game in the fourth quarter. And VUU returns the ensuing kickoff for a touchdown to get it back down to 3. So it seemed like every time Cal kind of had a chance to really put the game away, Virginia Union just wouldn't let them. But I think at the end of the day, their inability to throw the ball really was problematic. And I mean, they got the one big play that Derricott got on I think it was 4th and long, and that's what got him into at least close enough to be able to try that field goal. So again, they just kind of they definitely had more no quit to them than Cal did, but I think Cal just basically, just was more consistent on in terms of being able to be balanced offensively, and that was what killed them.
Yep.
All right, well, let's go to have 2 more that we're going to do from the box score perspective, and then we'll do kind of a more rapid fire roundup and get into the picks for round 2. So the GMAC got one really impressive win, but this one did not go their way. So Minnesota State kind of starting to replicate what they did a year ago, where they kind of backed their way into the playoffs and then go into round 1 and get a really impressive win. So Tony, I know you guys would have broken this down during the week on the regional podcast. Tell me a little bit about what some of your thoughts were going into this game and the way it played out. Did it kind of match up with what you were expecting to see?
Yeah, and on the show, Whit and I talked about how we felt like both of these games, Duluth and Mankato, would probably be the more physical of the 2 teams. Obviously, that did not play out for Duluth. It 100% played out in this game. And I think the biggest difference in this game was Mankato wasn't able to own the line of scrimmage early in the game. Findlay was right there with them. The biggest difference that Mankato had was their ability to throw the ball. And it didn't necessarily equate to them building a giant lead or doing a ton of stuff, but they were able to move the ball, move the chains, and kind of flip the field a couple of times and just establish enough consistency in the pass game where Findlay then felt like they we're going to have to try and defend both things. And that kept them off balance just enough where in the second half, you saw the Mavericks offensive line just take over the game. I mean, they just basically owned the line of scrimmage throughout the latter part of the third quarter and all the fourth quarter. And that's when it really got stretched out because this was a 7-7 game for a lot of the first half. And then the Mavericks Findlay basically bungled a punt. And Mankato was able to return that for a touchdown. And from that point on, you kind of saw the momentum shift and Findlay just basically was underwater from then on out. But again, it was as you move through the second half that Minnesota State really owned the trenches, especially with their offensive line, and that ended up stretching the game out.
Yeah, and Tony, I felt that Mitchell Thompson, the quarterback for Mankato, that this was probably his finest moment. For those who look back, Mankato's had 2 quarterbacks this year, and he was not the starter for the first portion of the year, but he did start in their opener against Northwest Missouri State and had success against the Bearcats and was able to hurt them on the ground. And I felt this game, he was a better passer than I've seen him be. And for him to be 20 of 27, and he had a lot of those passing yards in the first half.
Yep.
And they were able to keep moving the chains. So these weren't big plays.
Nope.
And they were hitting stuff across the middle. They were hitting a lot of little, the quick outs. And then, Thompson would go ahead and hurt him a little bit with the +1 run game. Sam Backer got out loose early for a score. And, by the time, right before half, as Tony alluded to, this was a tight ball game. And then right before half, Mitchell Thompson was able to scoot one in on a play where I don't think they had any timeouts left. And he just made a decision that he was going to get in. And he's a big boy. And he got in. And all of a sudden now we had a 21-7 ball game. To me, with what I've seen with the Findlay offense, this felt over to me then.
Yeah.
Because I knew Mankato was going to be physical and come at them and kind of try and play bully ball in the second half. And I kind of thought they did. And, that's when, they went ahead and just kept running, like Tony said, and milked the clock. They got a tip ball pick that they immediately were able to get something from there. And the only other score that Mankato gave up was on a block punt where they just, Findlay came in hard and ended up getting it for a touchdown.
And it was an all by the way.
Coach Hoffner was pretty upset about that afterwards. But you know what? If that's if they only gave up one offensive score in that game, and it was at the start of the contest. This Mankato team, I mean, Coach Hoffner mentioned it at the end of the presser. He didn't so much as say, I don't know what we are week to week, but he basically said there are two different versions of us. And the version that played Augustana a few weeks ago showed up for this one.
Yep. And I think they did a great job of really keeping Jaden Farmer under wraps. Because, I mean, obviously he's kind of – you've seen a little bit too much this year as he goes, so goes the Findlay offense. And it looked like he might have been a little nicked up as the game kind of wore on.
Right.
But he was nowhere near as effective as I think the Oilers have been used to seeing him.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go back to SR2, and we'll kind of wrap up this part of the show where we're going to deep dive some of these games, and then we'll do the roundup on the other results. This was a really good game. I actually just finished watching this one shortly before we fired up the show here. Guys, I'm not sure what you were able to take in from this game, but I thought this was pretty fascinating. It was 23-21 at the half, and it kind of felt like this might be trending towards a bit of a barn burner. The Albany State defense really clamped down in the second half. Valdosta's only score in the second half was the kickoff, the opening half, the opening kickoff of the second half. They took it all the way back for a touchdown. That was pretty much the day for Valdosta State. The Albany State defense really clamped down and then got the scores that they needed at the end. But I was actually really impressed with Albany State in this game. Valdosta came into this with all the momentum in the world, really hot. They were really peaking at the right time. I was not going to be at all shocked if Valdosta State won this football game. In the end, I just think they still have too much inconsistency on offense, less than 300 yards total for the day.
Yeah.
Albany State, a really great effort, well over 530 yards total offense, 266 rushing, 264 passing. All their playmakers showed up to play. Really impressed with Isaiah Knowles. He had a really good day. They had a couple wide receivers that were making big plays. I really like their running back, Weish. Really dynamic little rusher, great vision, good, excellent between the tackles. I was really impressed with Albany State in this game. And Whit, I know you were tracking a ton of different things all day, but did you get to have eyes on this one at all?
I did. And, as you mentioned, Valdosta kind of got after them. They broke a long run early. And I was like, okay, this is Valdosta's just riding this hot wave that they've had. Our guy, Coach Poe, had mentioned this, that, ever since their bye week, they've been red hot. And I thought it continued on through until about halftime, like you mentioned. And then in the back half of the contest, I thought Albany State really showed that they were just flat out a better team. And, they had the ball for 41 minutes, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And, Valdosta ends up having 13 first downs all contest. Albany State had 31. It feels like if this game would have continued, it would have continued to get further and further in terms of the gap. But, Albany State, I think that this was a big win for them. I realize that this is not necessarily vintage Valdosta State. But you know what? When you have that Valdosta State tag and they're both in the same, down in the state of Georgia and everything else, this is a pretty big win right here for Albany, coming off of Valdosta going to the championship a year ago. I mean, Ferg, I think it's easy to overlook that. Am I going the right direction, buddy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there have been many games over the years where Albany was competitive, maybe even led at the half, and then the second half, Valdosta would just take over and just, sort of boat race them. The one thing that really stood out to me here is that, for all the yardage that Albany had, they went 0-2. Well, they had two opportunities where they didn't score in the red zone. I mean, so this game could have got even bigger in terms of being out of hand than it actually was. But, they certainly were a resilient bunch. Isaiah Knowles also rushing for 92 yards, just shows you how much they really wanted this game. So it's a really big deal for especially in that part of Georgia where they're natural rivals.
Well, and the resiliency is, I don't think we can understate it in this game, guys, because I mean, all the game flipping that I did yesterday, the little bit of this game that I caught was, mid to late third quarter, and Valdosta's up 9, so they got a 2-score lead, and they had just punched the ball deep into Albany's end, and then there were a couple of timeouts, and so I got distracted and moved on to something else. So when I saw this game final, I was really surprised because I thought, geez, Valdosta was going in to score again, but Albany was able to force a fumble on that red zone trip by Valdosta, and then turn around and get back on them and kind of put it away from there. So I mean, you got to give credit to the Rams for just didn't matter what Albany or what Valdosta threw at them. Albany State was ready for it.
Absolutely.
Yep, great win. So that's the last of the games. We have the box score graphics for a deep dive, but we do want to go through the rest of the results as well. There were a few that kind of went just the way we expected to, so we won't completely dive into those. Tony, is there really even a whole lot we need to say about the Ferris and Northwood? It feels like that's one where the final score kind of tells a story.
Yeah, and I mean, if Whit never put me up to it, but if somebody would have said, "Hey, what do you think in this game?" I would have said 40 or 45, and it kind of played out that way. I think the only noteworthy thing is that no Wyatt Bauer in this game. He dressed but didn't play, but obviously when you've got Chase Carter, you feel pretty comfortable with that. And we saw a lot more Carson Gulker at the quarterback position in this game, but this was a run-heavy effort for Ferris, which is to be expected. When you can just plow somebody down and put up 4 bills plus on the ground, that's what Ferris is going to do. And they did that with little difficulty yesterday.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead on to the next one, Whit. I thought this was a great win for Western Colorado, and this was a very hard earned one as well. I actually watched this one this afternoon. Did any of the other guys have eyes on this? I'm happy to defer it if you had a chance to get a look at it.
I caught part of the tail end of it, but the game was pretty much at that final score already. And what I will say is, Western Colorado, you could sense just even from the way those last couple of possessions for Central Washington went, the Mountaineers were just making life miserable for Central Wash's offense pretty much most of that game.
Pretty much the whole game. It was a very defensive football game in the first half. It was 14-3 Western, late in the first half. And, all the scoring had been set up by chunk plays. 2 long touchdown runs for Western, and Central had a long pass play that they were able to convert into a field goal. The real pivotal moment in that first half was a pick six with about 30 seconds to go in the half. Western's looking at going into the break up 14-3, possibly even adding more. And all of a sudden that leads down to 14-10. And then Central adds 10 points early in the third quarter. So they had a 17-0 run. And all of a sudden you've got Western kind of on the ropes. And at that point, I think, Whit, you and I were talking on the phone. I think we both kind of thought, well, this is where Central Washington kind of takes control of this football game. It didn't happen that way. Western was very resilient. We just talked about that with Albany, same type of situation. Western was very resilient. They rallied, they got down and got a score, so they retake the lead, and then a crushing turnover for Central Washington. I want to say early to midway through the fourth quarter when they were driving to possibly retake the lead, turn the ball over. Western gets back down the field and then actually extends that lead, and then last couple of series, the Western defense just closed it out. So a really great way for them to rally and then finish at the end. I thought this was a really good performance for Western Colorado.
Yeah, and our guy Craig also mentioned, who covers the Lone Star, that the fact that Central Washington was not able to run the ball exactly how like they've been able to against so many other opponents, and had to throw it a little bit more, I thought was an important piece. And Jazz Baines, head coach of Western Colorado, does a tremendous job with that program. They don't necessarily have all the bells and whistles everybody else does, who are some of the real top programs. And what he has had them performing at a high, consistent level like this, in the playoffs each year, and they get a win like this on the road. I thought that was a kudos to he and his crew, Drew Nash and company. This is why I picked them. To me, it felt like it was their time. So very, very happy for them.
Yep. Drew Nash had a very typical kind of day for him, but Quinn Bailey, a big hero for the Mountaineers yesterday. He had a couple of really impact plays for them. So yeah, I agree with big win there for Western Colorado. Why don't you take these, Wick? Unless Tony, I know you probably had some eyes on those. If you want to kind of just give us a few talking points.
Yeah, I'll talk for a moment about the Pitt game, and Pitt was up 14-3 early in this contest in a game where we felt like Pitt was just flat out the better team, and Chadron, Pitt didn't put Chadron away, and teams are about dead even in yards, right around 300 apiece, and Chadron was able to limit a lot of what Pitt wanted to do offensively. And the Eagles, though, did throw 3 picks, which I felt cost them dearly. They really weren't able to get their run game going. And, they still found a way, Chuck, to be up, midway through the fourth quarter. And then Pitt goes ahead and, kind of finally scores. And I had jokingly said on Twitter, first team to 20 wins. Well, that came true. But I would be remiss if I didn't say I felt like this was another one of those situations where we just came off a monster game being played in front of, 12 to 15,000 people in Kansas City. You come back home and it's not going to be nearly the environment, and it's hard to get your juice in those moments. And you know what? Pitt State almost paid for it here because Chadron took them down to the end. Tony, how did you see it, buddy?
Yeah, exactly the same way. I mean, I was one of the things where when I picked this game up, you kind of get in the feel of where things have been going. And to your point, the multiple turnovers by Chadron, the inability to really be consistent offensively, and yet Pitt State just kind of never put them away. And so when Chadron goes down, gets that score, and then gets the 2-point conversion to make it, because it was 14-9. And so they get the score and the deuce to make it 17-14, and you're thinking to yourself, are they going to go down there and pull this off?
Right.
And yeah, Pitt responded, but it's not like it was this instant response. I mean, they put together a long methodical drive to go get it done, but it was the sort of thing where, boy, you had to give Chadron credit for being resilient. And we talk about that with playoff teams and some of the other teams that got wins. I thought Chadron was resilient in a loss. For them to fight back from all the things that they did to shoot themselves in the foot and be able to get a lead in the fourth quarter in this game, right, at the Jungle. I mean, it was impressive performance for them, even though they didn't get the win. Agreed.
Chuck, on the flip side of our graphic here, this game was not close. UIndy was up 30-0 before I had a chance to find the game.
Yeah.
And, what did they have? Almost 500 yards of offense. Truman throws a few picks. One's a pick six. They lose a fumble. And Gavin Sukup is a guy that we probably don't get a chance to talk about enough because, if we're going to be honest, Indy does not play in that many high-profile contests that we would talk about in that manner. And he was 17-22 for like 340 and 3 scores or something like that.
I think he was 17-22, 339 and 3 scores. And we talked about him on the Region show, and that was one of the things we liked about him was his ability to win different ways. Because it's amazing how often you look at one of their box scores and he throws for $189, but they still win easily. But when they need him to put up a big number like he did Saturday, there he is and ready to rock. So they definitely showed that they had Truman outmanned. And I realize I just railroaded what you were going to say. So hopefully you got your thoughts still.
No. He's really become a seasoned quarterback now.
Oh, yeah.
You take a look at some of the playoff games that he's had. He's gone against Pitt at Pitt. He's gone against Grand Valley at Grand Valley. And so this playoff thing's kind of become an old hat for him. And he's one of the top performing quarterbacks in Division II. So if you haven't gotten a chance to see much of Indy, they're quite the formidable squad.
Yeah. In the last couple of weeks, Gavin has set multiple career passing records at UIndy. So, he's had a remarkable run there as a Greyhound.
Well, he's been there for like 12 years, so I hope so.
Well, it's only 3 actually, but yeah.
No, I know. He's one of those guys where it just seems like we've been talking about him for like way more than a handful of seasons. But I know
Absolutely, because he made an impact there from like the second game
Day
of
one.
his first season.
right.
And yeah.
Yep.
I think they had a game at Saginaw that was like week 2 or week
Yep.
3 his first year, and he was phenomenal. And yeah, we've been watching him since.
Oh, and he was a star in JUCO, if I remember right. But so I'm sure somebody in the comments will come get me with the pitchfork on that one. But you know what? I'm throwing it out there anyway. Here we go. So,
All right, let's
here we
move
go,
on.
Chuck. Last one. That's all you, buddy.
Back to SR1, Kutztown, no trouble there with Bentley. They actually had a little bit of a sluggish start, but then once they got going, there's just not really much to unpack there. They were just that much better than Bentley in that one. And I think if there was maybe a surprise result of the weekend, it might have been Assumption going to IUP and getting a really hard-earned 23-20 win. This is one of those games where in the first half, IUP was up 20-7. And that just felt like a big lead in this matchup. And I really didn't think that Assumption was going to be able to go there and win with a backup quarterback. You know, I talked about them in the region show that Chris and Carrie and I did. Assumption has a really good quarterback, but he had been injured in that Bentley game a couple weeks ago, did not play the season finale, did not play in this game either. And I really didn't think they'd be able to win that without their guy, Jake Castantine at quarterback. But Dom Santiago played really capably as a backup, made a lot of big plays, made a few big runs for them. They got a field goal right before the half that made it 20-10. They got a touchdown drive early in the second half, and they shut out IUP in the second half. So they went out and earned it their way, and I thought it was a really impressive win for them. So they get to go back to Kutztown, which is where their season started all the way back in week 1. So they'll get another shot at the Golden Bears.
And you know what, Chuck? They got to the quarterback 3 times with sacks in that game, and Assumption gets to the quarterback often. And I thought that helped them out in this one.
Yeah, I was just going to mention the defensive coordinator for Assumption, David Castillo. He was in Elizabeth City last year. You know, he came into Assumption and installed his defense, and I mean, they have been, you know, at or near the top of Division II, and I think it was in sacks in particular this year. So it was a big deal for what they were able to do to IUP in that second half.
Yep. Yeah, great win there for the Greyhounds. So, Whit, do we have any more in the roundup, or are we on to? Oh, we do have a couple more. That's right, Super Region 2. So we had Newberry hosting Kentucky State. Final score 45-23. Wolves had them at arm's distance, I thought, most of the way. Got to give credit to Kentucky State. They took advantage of a couple of Newberry mistakes, got off the deck, and they actually made that a 1-score game in the third quarter. I think it was 31-24 at one point before Newberry was able to pull away and get the win there. And West Florida, same kind of thing. They was close early on with North Greenville, but they did pull away in the second half pretty impressively with a 43-19 victory. So those two will now meet in the second round. They have actually met once before in the playoffs, and Newberry got a surprise win down there at old Blue Wahoo Stadium. So we'll see what happens this time around.
If I'm not mistaken, that was Austin Reed's last collegiate game.
It was.
For Division II, I should say, quarterback. So, Chuck, one thing I want to mention is I was impressed by the fact that West Florida, they had nearly 300 yards on the ground and 5 scores. This is one of those games where they didn't need Marcus Stokes to play hero. And, if they can go ahead and pound the rock like that, that's a real dangerous offense. If they don't need to be overly reliant on the pass game.
No doubt. And Jay Sharp's been a very reliable running back for them all season, and he had a big game for them yesterday.
No doubt.
All right. Well, that's the wrap up on round 1. So we're going to start getting ready for round 2 with our picks, and we're going to pick all 8 games. So, Whit, I need some energy here for picking all 8 games. What do you got for me here, brother?
I know. So for those who are tuning in and wondering why we're doing an advertisement for a pizza and chicken in place, well, it's because we are. But we take a look here, guys, and Boss's Pizza and Chicken has been good to us for 3 straight years here, and we think that we've done them an okay job as well in return. And if you have any interest in opening up a pizza and chicken and beer joint of your own, Boss's is definitely a place to go ahead and look into. They will go ahead and help you on out if you're trying to open up your own place. I believe that they have roughly 10 to 12 locations at any given time, depending on, kind of where they are at with opening up something new, or if something, wasn't exactly what somebody was looking for in another area. There's a lot of questions all of a sudden popping up, Chuck, on bosses. I don't think that they're going to ship to Florida, but it's an interesting question. I'm not sure if I'd want you. I don't know if you want to ship that to Florida. Wings being shipped, I'm not sure how well that would go, but no. Yeah. And Chuck, we're going to have them throughout the end of the season, and we're going to go ahead and see if they'll continue to do it afterwards. If they don't, oh my gosh, can you imagine if they didn't, Chuck? We'd have to look for a new sponsor.
Well, I think you'd have to be a year-round spokesperson there, Whit. I think that's your calling.
I think I can handle that, but
they've been good to us, and we thank them.
100%.
Yes,
there should be like commercials up in the Dakotas and whatever else, and Whit can be like the Menards guy.
Yeah,
he's on the boss's pizzas and chicken commercials.
He could be.
They've actually got some guy who used to be like a stand-up comic who does stuff. They haven't realized that I'm easily funnier than he is, but
yeah, all right. I was gonna say,
yeah,
probably
they've never been in the green room with us, Tony. They have no idea.
No, probably work a lot cheaper too. So
keep talking so we can skip past this segment.
All right, so we'll do.
Okay.
Keep talking, so we ain't got to worry about this segment.
We got. Well, let's first of all my new friends in Ashland, just hold your left hand over that side of the screen so you don't see the first column there. We obviously all did pick Duluth, but there you can see the results from this past weekend. You can see why Poe had so much shame he couldn't even join the show this week.
Right, the heater came to an abrupt halt.
Yes, crashing down. He fizzled out rather quickly.
Well, with that said, Tony cutting a little bit of that gap. I'm still up 3 on Tony.
Un poco.
The rest of you are really far behind, but and Ferg, you got your head above water. So okay, there we have it. Let's go ahead, guys, and move to our slate of games. We'll start on off Assumption and Kutztown. Tony, do you have an upset brewing here?
No, I don't.
Fair enough. Tony with Kutztown right off the bat.
It is.
Okay, Ferg, how are you seeing this?
Yeah, Kutztown for me as well.
They have been looking pretty good the entire season. Chuckster, how do you see this, buddy?
I guess to give Assumption a little bit of hope here, they do know each other very well. They have played in the season opener for several years, and there have been times where Assumption has beaten Kutztown and times when they've played them very, very close as well. But this is very possibly the best team that Kutztown has ever had. So I don't see it for the Greyhounds, and it's possible that they're going to have to play this with a third-string quarterback.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about.
Dom Santiago got injured late in the game. Kind of a bizarre incident. It was a friendly fire collision. Unfortunately, kind of knocked him out of the game. So we don't yet know what his status is, or Jay Castantine either, for that matter. So big variable there. But honestly, no matter who's on the field, I would go Kutztown here.
I will as well. Watching Kutztown this last week, they've got some nice balance, and they get after you defensively. I like them in this one here. Game 2 might not be quite as easy. Now, we still have yet to get confirmation, but the word that we've gotten behind the scenes is that Cal is hosting this football game. I'm not sure if we would see it a whole lot different one way or the other outside of that. It's not like home teams have been wildly successful in the first round of the playoffs here anyway. Tony, who do you have in this one? How do you see it?
Oh, man. I rode with the Vulcans last week. Obviously, it served me well. I'm a little less interested in them this week just because, again, we talked about this in their game and when we broke down their win over VUU. We still just kind of don't know who they are from game to game. And sometimes it even seems like it's quarter to quarter.
The Mankato
of obviously went. Well, yeah, right. This seems like a spot where I think Frostburg actually might have the advantage. I just Cal at home, They've played in playoff games before. Sometimes I wonder if they almost don't lull you to sleep with the fact that you don't know what they're supposed to do. I'm going to take the Vulcans again just because I rode with them last week, but I'm really uneasy about it.
Fair enough. Ferg, since you always proclaim that I go last, and that has nothing to do with my success in the pick'em, I'm actually going to go with Frostburg here. And we didn't pick them last week because we didn't do that game, but I kind of like them in that contest. I feel like, it feels like this year is kind of their time right now. And, they went ahead and they won their playoff game like that. And I thought they did it and it was showing some balance, being able to run the football like they were, but they can throw it a bit. I like Frostburg in this. Ferg, how do you see it?
I would like to welcome everyone across the nation to the Haters Corner. I'm not really obligated to say anything nice about these two teams.
Yes.
The one thing I would like to say about both of them that concerns me is red zone. In the red zone, they both struggled in the red zone. So so that gives me a little pause in for both of them, but it's almost a bit of an equalizer in a way. Maybe that gives a little edge to Cal versus Frostburg there. Nonetheless, since I have to pick one, and since they cannot end up in a tie,
I was going to say, are we going to come back to you, or
yeah, right.
hey.
There's chapters to Ferg's pick here.
I'm going to go with Frosty in this one.
Okay, we got two guys going Frosty. Chuck, it sounds like you got to stand up for the PSAC here.
Well, remember, these two did play not that long ago. It was only a few weeks back, and it was a close game, 33-26. That game was at Cal. I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know that I can take a whole lot out of that game that I apply to this one. Frostburg played that game with a third-string quarterback the whole way. There were 3 combined special teams touchdowns in that one, 2 for Frostburg State, 1 for Cal. So I don't really know what that means for this game, other than that they're fairly evenly matched, and I expect it'll be a really competitive football game that probably comes down to the very end. I think it's a toss-up. Honestly, I'd like final confirmation of where this game's going to be. I think that could be a factor this weekend, especially with the holiday kind of in the disjointed week. But I'm going to go with Cal, but I think that this is a very close game.
Fair enough. I thought for a moment Cal was getting ready to burn us down, but let's move to our next one here. For the third time. No, Benedict and Albany State. We've been able to keep the slide in the back of our show here because it's reappearing every once a month now. But Benedict here is 0-2. There are 2 losses. Come to Albany State. Now, when we look at the numbers, Albany State scores more and gives up less. First game was a blowout. Second game was not a blowout. Closer contest. Boy, it sure feels like the time for Benedict to get some revenge here. Ferg, I'm going to you first. You can wipe the sweat off your brow. What do you got here, buddy?
Benedict is I think we now can transfer. We need to transfer 9 lives to another team, and maybe that's Benedict here since Pueblo is now out of the picture. And gosh, the way they just find ways to win. But Albany is still the better team on paper. Albany is they're at full strength now. And I just think that in the end, they're the number 1 seed, and I'm going to give them that respect. So I'm going to go with the Golden Rams.
Tony, you're shaking your head. Yes, I think that you've got a similar vibe.
I do, from the standpoint that, we always say it's hard to beat a team twice in the same year. Is it more difficult to beat a team 3 times? I don't know if I'm going to get on board with that. I mean, I think Benedict's shot was 2 weeks ago. And once we knew they weren't going to get it, I got to stick with Albany State.
Chuck, are you going with the crew here?
Yeah, Ferg said, they're the better team on paper. They are. I think they're also the better team on the field. And I was really impressed. And I don't want to sound like I'm dismissing anything that Benedict has done this year. They've had a really great season. I think Albany State's done a little bit more, including beat Benedict twice.
Right.
And I was really impressed. The one thing I didn't mention when we kind of talked about them a little bit earlier was their offensive line. I thought their offensive line looked really good against Valdosta. I think they're just a little bit better than Benedict, and I think that they can beat them 3 times in the same season. So I'll go Golden Rams.
I will as well. I like Albany quite a bit in this game, and I'm not sure if Albany can pull that off or Benedict can pull that off 2 weeks in a row after they were down 24-0 and everything that comes with all of that. So I'm going to take Albany in this one. Newberry and West Florida. I think this is a little more interesting game than most who tune in and just assume West Florida here. Ferg, what's your first thought?
My first thought is we know West Florida could put up points. We know they could put up yards. My second thought, however, is really good offenses can return the favor against West Florida's defense. To me, I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with Newberry. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to attempt the upset again.
Well, Ferg chasing quite a few games in the pick'em. Going with the upset, I can respect that absolutely. The comments area is getting a little bit of blow up there. They're getting some interest in this. Tony, are you feeling the same way?
If there were an upset that made the most sense to me to pick this week, I think this is it. I just can't get myself there. I think I still got to take West Florida, particularly at home. And I think they've settled in and really been more impressive as the second half of the season's gone on. And not to say that Newberry hasn't done the same. It scares me. It honestly, I almost feel like Newberry, you could almost argue they're the favorite in this game. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm still going to take West Florida.
Chuck, I think if I'm not mistaken, you had West Florida going to the national title game when we did our preseason picks.
Yeah.
Do you find any reason to move off of that here?
Well, I could certainly make an argument for picking Newberry in this game. They've been very impressive, and they've won 8 games in a row now. So, and I think I mentioned earlier, like they did meet once before, and Newberry was a considerable underdog and won that game. A long time ago, 2 completely different teams at this point, but
right.
that did happen in the past. But I am going to go West Florida here. I actually thought that the game with North Greenville was going to be closer than it was. I'm pretty impressed with that West Florida was able to pull away the way they did. I think that means that they got past the Valdosta State loss the way they needed to, and that they're in a pretty good mental state at this point. So I like the Argos here.
You know what? I'm a little scared of this one. Tony was kind of alluding to it, and I agree with him. I can't pull the trigger on Newberry because I feel like the Argos are a team that I think will be there in the Final Four and can be a formidable opponent for whoever they face at that point, including one of the 2 fire-breathing dragons. I'm going to take West Florida in this one, but I would not be surprised if this was a 41-38 kind of game.
Yep.
I just feel like the Argos, though, are going to go ahead and outlast them here, but I would not be surprised if we are talking at all about Newberry with the upset here. We'll have to see, but I'm going to stay with the Argos. Next game. This one here, I think is, it's so easy for us to just go ahead and say Ferris State and be done. Ashland and the way they get after people physically and the fact that they lead the country in sacks and everything that goes along with that, I think offers an interesting test to Ferris State. Tony, do you see it that same way, or do you think Ferris just has too much?
No, I absolutely see it the same way. One of the things that I've seen Coach Anise mention in press conferences a few different times over the years is he really loves playing teams that don't know that much about them. Because if you really look at the way they run that offense, there's a lot of they're like Harding and that they're really difficult to prepare for, particularly when you don't know what they're due. You don't understand the basics of their scheme. So the teams that he sees repeatedly, particularly league opponents, tend to be the one who have the bigger puncher's chance of at least slowing them down or giving them some difficulty. Well, Ashland used to be in the GLIAC. Ashland, since they went to the GMAC, this is their 5th season in the GMAC. The first 4 seasons that they were in the GMAC, they played Ferris out of conference in every one of those 4 seasons. And on top of that, Tim Rose is the defensive coordinator at Ashland and has been. I think this is his 17th season. So he has seen as much or more of Ferris than anybody else in the country, save the handful of teams that Ferris plays every year in the GLIAC. So I would wager that this game has Tony Annese's full attention for that fact alone, that he knows he's going to get somebody coming in with a defense that, is going to be able to at least give them a little bit more of a challenge than what they're used to seeing. Do I still think Ferris is the better team and is going to win? Yes. Am I picking Ferris? Well, they're my national championship pick, so I kind of have to. But I also feel like, this is going to be one of those games where I think Ferris is going to be on full alert, and we might see one of the better games that they play all year, just because Coach Annese is going to be so dialed in to have them ready, because he knows the challenge that Coach Rose and the Ashland Eagles can present coming into this one.
Yeah. And I think Daryl brings up a real fair point here about the amount of weapons, and that this is what any team needs to deal with, is all the weapons of Ferris. Ferg, puncher's chance with Ashland, or how do you see it, buddy?
Tony, I got a question. What's the lowest score that Ferris has had this season?
I don't know that they've scored. I'm trying to think. I don't think they've scored below 30.
Right. What was the score at the end of regulation with Saginaw? Wasn't that like low 30s?
No, it's 38.
38. Yeah. Okay.
I think it was 34 opening week against Pitt. Wasn't
Pitt State. That might be right. Yeah.
And that's kind of my point, is that, Ashland's got to really slow down a potent offense that, really hasn't played. They haven't scored in the level where, Ashland probably likes. The defense, they're going to have to figure out a lot of things, and they're certainly going to be capable. My question is, does the adjustment happen too late in the game for the offense to catch up for Ashland? That's my concern. I'm sorry. I'm not picking Ashland in this one, as much as it might be a little tempting to do so. I'll just eat it. If they win, I'll just eat it.
Yeah.
Well, and you don't need to apologize for picking Ferris, certainly. Chuck, what are some of the key differences for you in this contest?
Well, as impressed as I was with everything Ashland did this past week, yesterday, Ferris is just a totally different defend than a team like Duluth or even the other good teams that Ashland has played, like Findlay and Tiffin. It's just a totally different animal. Mm-hmm. And I think Tony made a lot of points. Ferris will be very well prepared for this. They're not going to overlook Ashland. I think there's zero chance that they overlook Ashland. That said, I do think Ashland's defense will create some problems for Ferris and give them a puncher's chance. What I'm worried about with the Eagles is that there's an element to their game that they still just don't really have or haven't been able to showcase a lot, and that's a downfield passing game. They ran the ball very well yesterday, but if they had been pushed into some passing situations, I just don't know that there's a ton of confidence that I would have in that downfield passing game. I think they're really going to need that to be able to keep pace with Ferris. They had that last year. I haven't really seen that from the Eagles this year. So unless they've got something that they just haven't really rolled out yet, maybe some new wrinkles that we'll see this week, I think that's really going to hold the Eagles back here a bit. So you got to go with the defending national champs here in Ferris State.
Yeah, and I mean, Ashland has seen Ferris, not this season, but each of the last 2 seasons. They played them close the first time.
Each of the last 4. Each of the last 4.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that they had played all the last 4 seasons. Okay.
Each of the last 4, and then pre-COVID, they were still in the GLIAC.
There you go. So, and the last time these 2 met was 43-3 Ferris. Now, the time before that was 10-point game. Now, I just feel like there are different. Ferris is just a different game speed than the GMAC or the Northern Sun, and I think that's the big challenge here. Is I just don't think Chuck alluded to it. I'm not convinced that their offense is going to have the ability to be able to do what they need to and put up enough points. I think that they can limit Ferris at times with what they can do defensively, but I just feel like that's going to be not enough in this one. But I am interested to see what that first quarter looks like.
Yeah,
and because I think Ashland can hang around in this. I don't think this is one that they just get the knockout punch right away. I just don't feel like that's how it is. So we'll see, but I also have Ferris in this one.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, too, Ferris has got a couple of key guys on defense that have started to make their way back. So that defense, as the playoffs move through, might be getting healthier. So yeah, so if to Chuck's point, if Ashland's had any trouble moving the football, particularly downfield, it's going to get even harder possibly for them against Ferris than maybe it could have been 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Sure. Well, we're getting towards the end here, guys, and this one's not very easy, I don't think. Mankato and the Hoffner Magic goes in and plays at UIndy, and actually we've got an incorrect record there for UIndy. They are not unbeaten, but they have one setback. They have got a great offense, as you can see right there. But the question is does the experience, the physicality, everything that Mankato brings, is that going to be enough for a second straight week? Tony, how do you see this one?
Yeah, I've been struggling with this one all day. Because, I mean, we watched Mankato deliver on what we thought they could at Findlay yesterday, which was enough diversity on offense to kind of get them rolling, and then the ability to just lean on them as the game wore on. Do I think the level of physicality week in and week out in the GLVC is maybe the same as the Northern Sun? I don't know if I'm convinced of that. But at the same time, I don't think the delta is as stark as people might want to think. And at the end of the day, and like we talked about last week, I think Indianapolis has a definite advantage at the quarterback position in this game. So I think I'm going to take the Greyhounds, riding with the bonus home game that they maybe weren't anticipating they were going to get. And I think asking Mankato to go on the road again, which I think they play on the road like their last game of the regular season as well.
No, Mankato actually had Mankato. If that's what you're speaking of, they were at home playing Jack Strand and company at Moorhead.
Oh, that was at home. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. All right, I thought this was going to be their third straight week on the road, but I still think I'm going to take Indianapolis. If the Mavericks go in here and win this game, wouldn't shock me. It really wouldn't.
Right.
But I just think this, kind of similar to what you were saying about Western Colorado. I think this might be Indianapolis's time to go a little bit deeper than they're more used to seeing them.
Ferg, I feel like this is predictable for you, but at the same time, you have something going against you, Ferg. It's the fantasy point value of Gavin Sukup, and I know you respect that. Because he was one of the top quarterbacks in fantasy. So this one's got to be tugging at you on both sides. How do you have it, buddy?
Ladies and gentlemen, you've entered the most predictable part of the show. In Hoffner, we trust. Take us to the next round. But seriously, though, I think the one thing I want to see from Indy is they got to win a game against a non-GLVC team in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree.
That's number one.
Yep.
Number two, I mean,
for discrediting their win already. Let me roll that up and throw that in the trash. Bring Mankato in.
You look at that box score, he may have an argument, but it's all right.
So other than that scrimmage they just had yesterday, Ferg, we're moving right ahead. Yep.
The other thing is the weather is going to be cold. Apparently, looks like there's just the blast of Arctic air by that time in the
Yes.
week. So I wonder how that will affect the pass game a little bit. It happens. I mean, you never know. But in the end, I think that Mankato's offense is going to be physical enough to keep things going and maybe even play keep away a little bit too. So
Fair enough. Chuck, this might be the toughest one, I think, to call in the whole mix.
Yeah, you might be right, Whit. And it seems so foolish to pick against the Mavs in these situations, just because they seem to have been built for this for the last several years. And yeah, as much as we kind of joke about Ferg with his in Hoffner, we trust, it is a big part of that, right? The way they prepare for these games, it's a huge advantage that they have. But Coach Hoffner himself did say, there have kind of been two versions of us this year. Well, since week one, there's only been one version of UIndy. They have played at a very consistently high level since the week one loss at Findlay. They have been very impressive in every game since then. So I really like where they're at as a program. Their trajectory since then has been a straight line upward. I do think this is their time to go get an out-of-conference playoff win. I like this moment for them. I'm going to go with the Greyhounds. I know it's probably foolish to pick against the Mavs, but I'm going to go with the Greyhounds to get the win here and move on to the regional final.
Well, I know the Mankato coaching staff is watching this moment very closely, getting ready to get the chalk to put this on the board. And, Chuck, it's an interesting thing because I really feel, and what's funny is if Hoffner says it okay, if Witt says it, I take arrows for it, but you know how that works. I feel like Indy either destroys Mankato in this and just throws the ball down the field and really has their way with them and has a resounding win, or Mankato pulls them on in for a street fight and Mankato goes ahead and advances, and Hoffner just knows how to win in the playoffs. So which way am I going on this? Well, all the Mavs coaches were dying for me to go ahead and pick UIndy. Sorry, I am taking the Mavs on the road here. And I know I can hear the disappointment down the road in Mankato because they were hoping to all give me a hard time about this, but
Yeah,
I found myself in the middle of the last game, Chuck, just sitting there doing one of these things like I should have known. And when they were rolling.
Well,
but now they got to play good 2 weeks in a row, Chuck, and they haven't been doing that. And I think last week they were just thrilled by the fact that they didn't have to play Jack Strand again. So
well, they do now.
Pretty. I just got to stop the run this time. But now
they got to play
Jack
someone
Strand.
like it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm so conflicted, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take the Mavs here. But the game I might be most interested in all this week, definitely right there.
I'm sure they wanted you to take the Greyhounds for the bulletin board material. I don't think Tony and I are important enough in your part of the country to go up on the bulletin board. But we'll see. Maybe
they'll just replay last week's show and be like, "See, who doesn't like us?"
I'm not important enough in my own house to get somebody to put bulletin board material up. So.
Normally, by the time I'm done making my pick, I'm getting text messages from that part of the world. But let's move to the next one here, and certainly no less a game. And in terms of the national rankings and everything else, this is the biggest game of the week. Pitt State and Harding playing, two teams, top 5, top 10, and depending on what poll you're looking in. And Pitt State, frankly, got mopped. Than the first round last year. If I'm going to be real frank, at a time where I felt that they were having a hard time holding the rope anymore. By the time they got to the end of last season, after Central Missouri picked their number on them, a few weeks before that, I just felt like Pitt was in a different place than where they are right now. Heading into this one, and I think they've got a little bit more capable offense quarterback who can make some plays. Does that mean that that's enough to beat Harding? Tony, what do you see?
I'll be honest with you. I really think Pitt State is going to be able to give Harding a bit more of a tough time, certainly than they did last year. In fact, I almost think this game might be a little bit closer than what we saw this past week against Northwest. With that said, I still think Harding. I feel like Harding and Ferris have been on this kind of collision course all year, and so it's hard for me to really, unsee that at this point. I think this is. I still think this is Harding. Even though I think I like Pitt State to make this interesting at the very least.
Yeah, and it's wild that we're talking about this way between two teams that are in our top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's how good Harding has been.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way around it. So, Ferg, do you give Pitt a chance on the road here, or is it Harding?
Well, I think they have a chance. They found ways to win, gritty wins. So, yeah, there's definitely a chance here. Chadron was a really good defense, and they had a hard time after a while to muster anything. So, and Harding's also a really good defense. But your mention of going down memory lane to last year, Pitt was my eventual national champion, and that crashed and burned in the first round because they played Harding. I'm not going that route.
That crashed and burned in the first quarter.
Yeah,
exactly. So I'm not following that again. They're gonna have to take Harding down, and I'm gonna go with the Bisons on this one.
Okay, Chuck, we're giving you a perfect opening to take a big upset here. Chuck, is that where you're going?
No, I mean, I'm not going to rehash everything you guys said because it's, I have a lot of the same thoughts. I do think it's a different game than it was last year. Because to your point, Whit, I think Pitt's in a very different place at this point than where they were a year ago. So I do think this is a much closer game. I think it's very competitive. If Pitt finds a way, it would not shock me, but really hard to go against Harding here, especially at home. We've talked about it earlier, but they've really crafted an incredible home field advantage there. The fans really turn out to support them. We know how fickle playoff games can be, especially these Thanksgiving weekend games. Some places they'll have a really good crowd. Some places it'll be a friends and family only. I think they'll have a great crowd. It'll be an intense environment. So I like the Bisons there.
I'm curious to see if Pitt can, I'm going to say last the first half.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds crazy, but you know what? When you watch Harding, you watched them against Northwest this last week, it's like they're impervious to anything. Like if something, they had one where they end up taking over the ball, deep in their own territory. Okay, that just means that we have longer to go to score a touchdown now. And they just start doing their thing. And the machine starts rolling. And I feel like Pitt can make this where at halftime we're going, well, they're close enough. They're within striking distance. And then I just feel like Harding goes ahead and slams the door on the first drive of the second half. And then we just go, yeah, I probably should have known it. And Harding goes ahead and still finds a way to win comfortably. But if there's any team right now in the mix in their immediate crosshairs, I feel like Pitt is the one that can go ahead and give them a really tough contest. But I just can't go against Harding. I think that they have too much.
All right.
Our
last
final
one.
game.
Last one.
Oh.
So Tony, we got UTPB coming in hot after a big win there. And then we go ahead and we've got Western Colorado coming off a real big win of their own. Both teams won on the road. Western Colorado must have the better resume to this moment. So to the point where they earned the home game amongst the unseeded teams.
Yeah.
This game, I looked at the forecast. It is supposed to be right around 25 to 35 degrees with a little snow starting in on Saturday. One team is going to be real cool with that. The other team is not going to be so real cool with that. and may throw it a little bit more. So I think it makes for an interesting matchup, not to mention the elevation. But UTPB was there a few years ago. Western Colorado had them big in that game, and UTB came back and made it close. That all said, who are you going with, buddy?
It's the slippery slope, right, of the transitive property of football. Because if memory serves, UTPB lost to Central Wash, right, who Western Colorado beat. But Western Colorado lost to Pueblo, who Permian Basin beat. What the hell are you supposed to do?
It's kind of
The
like
math
this
doesn't math.
you-
The math doesn't math.
You know none
like
of that
this
matters.
last week, guys. It's like this last week when the GMAC blows out the Northern Sun. The Northern Sun blows out the GMAC.
Yeah,
and we go,
right.
Right.
What are we supposed to take away from that?
You can't make
Yeah.
any sense of it.
Yeah.
Boy, it is hard for me to pick against Western Colorado at home in this game when I know how their defense plays. I just feel like Coach McCullough, over the last handful of weeks, having things be a little bit quiet. Cannon Gibson's been kind of getting healthy and dialed in. I think the Falcons are going to cause some problems here again 2 weeks in a row. I'll ride with them.
Tony riding with the Falcons. Ferg, I think there's another real tough game. How do you see it, buddy?
I agree with that. There are actually a lot of similarities between these two teams. They convert third downs at a pretty high clip. Their defenses slow down the opposing offenses on third down as well at about the same rate. Western not really much of a running team after Drew Nash. That to me is definitely a question mark, except for the weather, as you described it. I think that may actually favor UTPB. But then again, this is a Texas team going to play cold weather. I think
guys on the roster.
Yeah. The other thing is that when I pick Western, they don't win. When I don't pick Western, they win. So
yeah. I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing.
Oh man, I'm going to go with Permian Basin to win, I guess. In this
Got
one.
2 picks so far for Permian Basin. By the way, as Ferg was going through the few chapters of his pick there, the Mankato hate mail is already coming in on my cell phone. They're voicing their displeasure with the way I leaned in that contest. They would like for me to reconsider. I'm not going to reconsider. Chuck, enough about that. Western Colorado at home, potentially a snow game. You lean their direction, or do you think UTPB's got the club to win that kind of game?
Well, every time I pick against UTPB, they seem to come through in a big way and really win not only a big game, but win in a very impressive fashion like they did yesterday. So I feel like that's just sort of my fortune with the Falcons. But, I picked Western Colorado to go to Central Washington and win. I just felt like, they suffered a couple of really tough losses there at the end of the season in the conference. And I just felt that they were a better team than what they had shown in those games. I think that win at Central Washington is something that could really propel them a long way. I'm going to stay with Western Colorado, and I like them to win this game, but I agree with you this is a really tough one to call.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that those at UTPB, Chris McCullough, I have a feeling was sitting there going like this, Chuck, praying for you to pick the other team, because otherwise we would have run the risk of, since I'm going with UTPB because I think they got a good thing cooking right now. No team wants for us to all pick one side and what should be a close game. Now we'll see what we do when we do that. We come across our regional pods this week, but if we're truth be told, this one we're doing right now gets the most eyeballs, and I'm concerned for UTPB if it becomes a snowstorm, because that's just territory they're completely not used to. But that said, Western Colorado, I'm just not sure if I'm ready for them to get over that next hump. And I think that UTPB can hurt them with their passing game. I really do. It'll be interesting to watch that chess match, guys, because Western likes to bring a lot of pressures. And, UTBB's got some athletes who can make some plays if they're getting the ball, in those moments. So that's really an interesting thing, in my opinion, to look for in that contest. Well, Chuck, that's the end of our games. Let's go ahead, buddy, and let you kind of unpack the last thing we need to talk about.
Yeah, just a reminder, and there were only a few things we tagged this question. We're running pretty long tonight, Whit, so I think we'll bring it to a close after this. But just a reminder, it's almost time for Harland Hill Award attention. We expect that the initial list of nominees will be out within the next couple of days, possibly as soon as tomorrow. And remember, at this point, we'll be looking at regional nominees. Those regional nominees will then be whittled down to 2 finalists per region. That'll be about a week to a week and a half from now. And then the winner will be announced day before the national championship game. So, and remember, if you're new to this, or if you haven't really heard that name or heard about it, the Harland Hill Award is for the Division II Player of the Year. It's basically the Division II version of the Heisman Trophy. I don't really like saying that, but it's something that everybody understands very easily. So it is for the Player of the Year. Very big deal. Some of the best players that ever competed in Division II have won it. So we will look forward to celebrating a whole list of nominees this coming week. And then we'll probably talk about them on the regional pods, and we'll kind of break down the candidates and talk about who the favorites are a week from tonight when we get back here for Inside D2 Football. So with that, Whit, I think we'll call it a show. There were only a few things I tagged. Not a lot of questions. I know there was a lot of banter and discussion early on, but we've run a little long for tonight, so I think we will call that a show. Bear with us on the scheduling for the regional podcast. With it being a holiday week, it's a little bit disjointed. We got to try to figure out how we'll do all the scheduling for that. Whit, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Chuck. I just talked to my guy Dykstra and AC, and we are, because of the fact, as Chuck was kind of alluding to with Thanksgiving, I'm assuming most people aren't trying to get away from their family and watch our programming. That sounds like a pretty good idea, doesn't it? But we are going to start things off tomorrow evening because of that time crunch this week. So I will have Dykstra and AC and my rowdy crew on tomorrow night, 7:00 Central Time. Tony and I will go ahead and do the SR3 on Tuesday evening. And so we know, Chuck, for sure that those are our first ones that we're getting out of the gate. And then from there, kind of, we'll go ahead and land them, accordingly. And we will talk, Chuck, I will mention during ours, and we'll have on socials what the ones will look like as we kind of move throughout the week.
Yeah, we hope we can have all these out by Wednesday night so that you can do exactly like Whit said and excuse yourself from your family at some point on Thursday and go catch up on all of these, on all the podcasts. So, but bear with us, and we'll get all that info out. And of course, if you miss it live, the pods will be out on all the socials. You can catch up with them at your leisure as we get later into the week. So we'll preview round 2 and keep things going as we roll on through the playoffs. So thanks to everybody for watching. Really appreciate it. We'll see you back here next week and throughout the week on all the regional podcasts. So thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you again next week.